and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Lauren, you got a story for people.
Yeah.
What is going on?
Nothing good.
Oh, no. What's happening?
Shocking, right? Well, basically what is happening right now is that states are going after lots of our First Amendment rights, which...
No.
Yeah, fun. So the one that they're going after hardcore right now is our right to protest. So in the past couple of years, 16 states have enacted legislature that drastically increases fines and potential jail time to protesters, especially protesters fighting against oil and pipeline projects. Like, that's the big thing that people are focusing on right now. And then, so that's those 16 states have definitely done it. And then even more have been enacted, or like laws have been floated over the table. Like they're maybe they're talking about it. Like different bills have been crossing over various legislatures' desks to try and make these protesters suffer a lot more for standing up for what they believe in. So the way they're trying to make it less obvious is that they're saying, well, it's critical infrastructure. So like they're focusing on, we're making sure that it's making these punishments a lot more severe for damaging or being around critical infrastructure. But it can mean construction sites. It can mean like, oh, well, there's a piece of pipe that was maybe going to be used for this pipeline project and somebody dinged it, no. Someone wrote on it. And so now it's a problem. So like one of the projects most recently that got a lot of attention, well, not a lot of attention, but it got attention, was the Pipeline 3 project. So that was last year. There was people went from all over the country to go and protest Pipeline 3, which is a pipeline that goes from Canada down into Minnesota. And it was getting old, and they decided it would be much better to just redo it instead of trying to fix it. But the problem is that the new pipeline was, maybe sure it'll bring in some workers for a little while, but like ultimately it's a bad thing, and people are worried about potential oil spills. They're worried about problems with the water. They're worried about it expanding into the rice fields that the native tribes are supposed to have, because that's what the treaties say. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to have these rice fields that they can go into, but this pipeline is now going to potentially damage those. And also, the pipeline is going to produce greenhouse gases at a rate to about 50 new coal-fired power plants. So just a lot worse in general for the environment. And so those are all the things that the protesters were worried about. And one of those things actually did kind of come to pass. They dug deeper than they were supposed to, and an aquifer they broke and caused a lot of groundwater seepage, and took them, and they didn't tell anybody about it. They told nobody about it for months.
You gotta trust the corporations. What could go possibly wrong? And by the way, again, shout out to Robbie Yeager, who's been doing fantastic reporting on the Colonial Pipeline disaster. We're working on to get him back on the show as well. We've got a lot of messages from a lot of people as well. We're trying to get him back on. But again, what's wrong with what could possibly go wrong? It's not like pipelines have a history of failing.
Right.
I mean, can anyone really pull up an incident? Yes, there's a lot of incidents that anyone can pull up. Didn't mean barge in, but I mean...
No. Barge.
Hey, let's play devil's advocate. What's the worst that could happen?
I don't know. Nothing great. So in this particular case, they haven't released any information about the actual potential damages to what happened when the aquifer broke, but they're worried about lots of sediment. They're worried about a lot of stuff in the groundwater because they broke this thing and didn't tell anybody about it. And there was a lot of other really sus things going on in this particular pipeline construction. One of them, we won't go too deep into it, but there were 4 people on the pipeline, 4 different people arrested during construction of the pipeline for 2 different sex trafficking schemes.
Oh.
4 people on the same that's just it's not a lot of people who work on a project, but that's a lot of people for one project, and to have 2 different, that's, I'm sorry, who are you hiring? And then everybody had to go to don't do sex trafficking workshop or something.
Obviously. I mean, come on.
Good job.
There's a workshop for that.
Yeah,
You know what? You know what? Okay. I don't even want to think about the scumbag that's actually doing that work. Or either I want to see what that person doing. I feel
They got fired.
okay. There probably might be some poor person who has to do this kind of workshop, and they're teaching that workshop to probably some very questionable individuals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried about said person's safety. About okay, folks, don't and like they're alone in this room with 40 or maybe 20 people who have some sketchy backgrounds that the corporation didn't look into. I mean, my God.
Yeah. So just in general, that project was on shaky ground, I feel like, on a lot of different levels, and levels I wasn't expecting it to be on shaky ground for. So Minnesota is one of the states that is cracking down hard on protesters. They're giving like jumped up charges and managing to twist the laws in very creative ways, according to some lawyers, about how to make it acceptable for them to be putting these punishments on people. So at first, like the protesters at this particular pipeline were getting all the usual charges like public nuisance and unlawful assembly, obstructing the legal process, all the normal stuff. Allegedly, if there's private property, they can even get trespassing. Now, that's where the problem really starts, is on the trespassing thing. So there is a lawyer, Joshua Preston, who says in Minnesota, we have a law that says if you trespass on a piece of critical utility infrastructure or a pipeline that's moving resources, crude oil, natural gas, etc., then you can be charged with a gross misdemeanor crime. And the logic of it was in a post 9/11 world. It was supposed to protect the state's infrastructure. But the state has been taking cases where the protesters have allegedly trespassed on construction sites and made an argument that it is, in fact, those construction sites were active pipelines just because there is a piece of pipe present or because there's construction equipment meant for constructing a pipeline or a pump station. So they're getting gross misdemeanor charges instead of just regular misdemeanor charges. The difference is regular trespassing charge, a misdemeanor, is up to 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. A gross misdemeanor is up to a year in jail and $3,000. So it's a big jump for someone who might have just been crossing through a construction site at the wrong time. And because the actual law only applies to active pipelines, not those under construction, so some of those cases are being thrown out. But not all of them. A lot of them are still being heard. The people who have gotten arrested and charged for various things at that pipeline. So they've been trying to charge people with like felony theft too for chaining themselves to a piece of equipment. You know, now it's felony theft, which can be thousands and thousands of dollars and 5 years in jail. And it's a mess for chaining yourself, just handcuffing yourself. That's it. Like, that used to be just the easiest way to protest something, is you chain yourself to it. But now you can get felony theft for it.
Wow.
Which...
madness and stupidity, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And again, remember what happened to the water protectors, the Dakota Access Pipeline, too. Mm-hmm. Remember, I mean, they had every right to stand up for themselves, but unfortunately, Barack Obama himself, didn't do anything until the very last minute, and it was begrudgingly so. But then Trump started up all over again. Pipelines work, my friends.
Well, now they've expanded, the Espionage Act to include animal activists and environmental activists as terrorists. And with the expanded Espionage Act, what that means is, or with Terrorist Act, as an extension of that Espionage Act, with that expanded definitions under Homeland Security, what that means is that you can't get a lawyer. They can detain you for an unknown amount of time. So these activists that are protesting environmental or, like, say, animal rights, are at risks of, like what you were saying earlier, of felonies or even worse, and with no rights of defense or to get an attorney and things like that. Glenn Greenwald did some great articles about corporate farming. And, I have a personal interest in it because I grew up on a farm in Wisconsin for part of my life and saw a lot of family farms go under because of corporate. And now you have Bill Gates, who's bought up swaths of farmlands for corporate farming, right? At the same time, they're increasing these laws and like expanding those federal laws. So yeah, the state laws are doing that, and then the federal laws expanded. So it's really kind of a double whammy for environmental activists to be criminalized in simply protesting, rights like the right for clean water or the right for not to have earthquakes in places that have never had earthquakes.
Mm-hmm. That would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, let's not have more earthquakes in places that shouldn't be having earthquakes.
Earthquakes,
It's not near a fault line. Like, what is, what?
Yeah, it's one of those things. Places that should not have earthquakes. It should be like a Jeopardy question.
Yeah.
Places that should not have earthquakes.
Or something like
What is I don't know, Texas, Oklahoma? Oklahoma is more
North Dakota?
What is North
Dakota?
North Dakota? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All those. Yeah, and by the way, folks, once that poisonous material from fracking or anything from pipelines get into the aquifers or any kind of water reserves, that water is going to be contaminated for a very, very long time.
We talked about forever chemicals, not even like, it was like, 2 weeks ago maybe? It's like, it gets into the groundwater and then it's a problem for everybody.
Yeah, and by the way, folks, just let all of you know, in case you are interested, we actually did a short documentary series way back in 2017 about how Lake Michigan is being dumped with regulated toxic waste. Dilution was a solution. So imagine this cup filled with toxic waste. This cup here filled with fresh water. Pour them together and then dump it in another tub of water, and then it's all good. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's dilution is a solution.
Yeah,
that's not how it works. That's not how it works at all. So so we did a toxic tour. Maybe I'll share it again on social media.
Will Obama come and make a point of drinking it?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, right.
God.
Oh yeah. Hey, no. I would love just go into Lake Michigan, take a cup of water right over there where those industrial facilities are at East Chicago or in Gary, Indiana, and be like, here, Obama, have a drink, and he's like, there's a whole lot of nope. I have hope, but nope. That's a nope. Anyway, sorry. Continue on.
So I wanted to talk about a couple of the new laws that have been actually enacted. So there have been several laws, or like I said, we can pull up. There's a graphic I have that just has a few. This is the protest law tracker. So specifically for protests, and it shares. If you go up a little bit. Just the different, there's lots of states that they've considered it, the bills that have been enacted, the bills that are pending, and the bills that have been killed. So that's not an insignificant number right there. There are a lot of bills that have been, they've died because everything went out of session, but that doesn't mean that they can't come back. And the fact that there's been 245 bills tossed onto the table is worrying. For me, anyway. So the way that the states are trying to get around these, to get around the actual people, they're changing definitions of a lot of different words. So Alabama expanded critical infrastructure to include pipelines and mining and operations. That was really recently. That was just like that. It was enacted in January, I think, of this year. So individuals are prohibited from unauthorized entry onto critical infrastructure and can be charged with Class A misdemeanors. Also, they expanded individual to include non-profit organizations.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that means if a nonprofit's helping out or like they're supplying anything, then the nonprofit can also be on the hook for any punishments dished out by the state. Wow. And in Lauderdale, in Alabama, it's allowing municipalities to control where protesters may gather and charge expensive fees for a permit and talk about how, like, the more expensive a permit is, how many people are actually going to be there, and, like, really, really making it difficult for people to get together for anything. And they can also charge protesters with, actual cost cleanup for cleanup and law enforcement, so you can get charged for that. But it just seems like a really easy way for, to invent numbers. The actual cost is whatever, but it's like, how long, or what, you're going to make an actual cost for overtime or something, but how long are they just going to are the police not doing anything? They're just standing there, clocking in hours, racking up the bill where they don't need to be. It just seems shady, honestly. Arkansas was one of the states that redefined riot. to be 2 or more people engaged in tumultuous conduct that creates substantial risk of public alarm.
Well, tumultuous sounds kind of fun.
Yes.
More.
I mean, like, honestly, like a lot of
Right?
these, the way they phrase things, it's like 2 drunk people walking down the street could, in fact, be accused of inciting a riot. Like, they could, based on the law.
Well, it really depends what the 2 drunk people are yelling about.
Yeah, it does.
Then it can incite. Because it's not saying it's just rambling of 2 drunks. Then.
Right. But it's just, broadening these explanations and these definitions, again, make for some potential ridiculousness. But also, it's like, but now it could be anything.
Right.
You know, you could have 3 people on a sidewalk with a sign, and then, you know, as much as I hate being accosted by, like, the PETA people or the ACLU people on the sidewalk, you know, there's 3 people making me take a little bit longer, but it's not a riot, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, we'll show you a riot. Right?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. No, I guess I can't say that.
Don't say that. We won't show anybody a
We
riot.
won't show anyone a riot.
No riots. We promise
We won't do any riots.
We promise YouTube, don't worry.
We'll stick with less
Later
than 3 people. Arkansas also made it an act of terrorism to any act that causes substantial damage to a public monument. But it's not clear what substantial damage actually means. Like, they didn't clarify that. So it's like knocking it down or painting it, you know, graffiti, egging it, who knows? We don't know what substantial damage means. Sometimes there's a couple of states that have broadened its, to causing substantial damage to monuments because, you know, they don't like it that people pull down statues of, like, Columbus and General Lee and stuff. So they don't like it that they pulled those down. So, or graffitied them or whatever. So it's like anything under, like, that costs over $200 or something to fix is substantial damage. So it's like anything. What's supposed to happen here? And again, they've included trespassing on the critical infrastructure property, but they have made it even more tricky and dangerous than they have in Minnesota. They made it a Class D felony to be caught on properties. That's up to 6 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. And there's also felony charges for anyone who purposely causes damage to critical infrastructure. And any damage not defined by law is considered Class B felony and can have up to 20 years in jail. So, and again, they're not defining a lot of what this damage might mean. So anything not defined by the law is a Class B felony for this damage. And so, like, one of the examples that was brought up was, like, someone who graffitis some equipment could have 20 years of jail time.
Wow.
Like, if they get the wrong judge, you know? And then in Florida as well, they changed and broadened the definition of riot to 3 or more individuals whose shared intent to engage in disorderly and violent conduct results in imminent danger of property damage or personal injury or actual damage or injury. Notably, the new definition does not require that individuals' conduct be disorderly or violent or that they commit any actual damage or injury. So it's all preventative. So it's like they have to, like, anything that they're doing might be seen as violent, which is just...
I see.
It reminds me of the bit in Winter Soldier where they're got the insight carriers ready to, like, fire on people who might do some bad stuff. And Captain America, before he was bad, was like, this isn't freedom, it's fear. It's like, that's what it is. They're really trying to make it very, very difficult, or make at least people frightened of trying to stop and say, hey, no, this isn't right. And again, the right to peaceful protest is in our First Amendment rights. Like, we're supposed to be able to stand up to the government in a peaceful way and say, absolutely not. I don't agree with this. And you're not listening when we talk to you about it, so we have to take other steps. Right. And now all of these, so many states, there are 39 bills have now been enacted across those 16 states to crack down on protests and protesters. Like, it frightens me. It worries me a lot that is where we seem to be heading, into a state where, yeah, it could be dangerous.
Support free speech, folks.
Please support free
Please
speech.
support.
It's so important.
You have to be an absolutist. I'm sorry if that offends anyone. You have to be a free speech absolutist. Look, to all those protesters who said they'd riot if Roe v. Wade died under Trump, where are you at now? To everyone else that said they'd riot if they start coming after you. This is how it's done. This is happening under a Democratic administration. Right now on Twitter, there are people who are saying, oh, we're in a Biden boom. Yeah, no, he boomed his pants, if that's what you want to know. Okay, that was kind of a low blow kind of joke. I didn't mean to do that. But look, the point is, Lauren is absolutely correct on this. You cannot have the states do this to people. Because think about it. If they're willing to do this now, what else will state or federal governments do to deny your right to peacefully protest, to organize, to speak, to hold assembly? These are the important building blocks of a republic, of a democracy. And yet, I think many Americans now are at this point to where they don't really understand the privilege and full power of the First Amendment. You have to support free speech. And that's what this show's all about. I think, Tara, I want to add anything to this?
I think you all covered it. That was an amazing, and I'm just kind of going over in my mind all the last law that you said really confused me. Like, I don't even know how that's enforceable. It's so vague. I didn't even get it.
And that keeps happening over and over. I was looking through these laws. It's always about the intent. There's so many things that could be just so easily misconstrued or twisted. There's
a lawyer's nightmare.
Mm-hmm, there's laws now on the books that are saying, like, if you can be charged with felonies and gross misdemeanors for talking with somebody or conspiring with somebody who was charged with one of these offenses. Like, they're really overreaching, but it passed in these states. These are laws that are now on the books in 16 different states. And it's not a road I want to go down.
No, it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope to being silenced and suppressed and just allowing us to be sheep and just do whatever the corporate, oligarchs want us to do.
Yep.
That's a good way to end it. And folks, final note, support free speech. That's all I can say. Support it.